Good afternoon, Board of Directors and Executives of Carnival Corporation. On behalf of MBI Consulting, we thank you for inviting us to your offices this afternoon. Our consulting team is made up of one ethical advisor, two financial advisors, as well as one legal advisor. Our ethical advisor is Shannon on the far end. We have Deepak as one of our financial advisors. I'm also a financial advisor, and we have Harleen Singh as our legal advisor. You've invited us here because in light of the recent events on the Carnival Triumph and all of the various things that happened during that incident, we have to keep in mind, however, that the Carnival Triumph is not the only thing that sets your company into a series of sort of problems for your entire corporation. The Carnival Triumph is simply what pushed it over the edge. As you can see, over 4,000 passengers were on the Carnival Triumph. After an engine room fire broke out, the cruise ship was set adrift in the Gulf of Mexico for 5 entire days. With those days, there was no electricity, unsanitary conditions, and little to no food was available. As far as the unsanitary conditions, living environments in the cabins were horrible. It was reported that on the walls there were feces seeping through and causing unhealthy conditions while temperatures were above 100 degrees. So that forced passengers to sleep outside either in the walkways or the hallways, which wasn't any better because the temperature outside was still 100 degrees. But there was also little to no food. Some customers reported waiting in lines for up to 3 hours to even get a little bit of food, maybe a little breakfast. And obviously no electricity. So unfortunately, some passengers had to actually defecate into plastic bags and buckets and hand them to employees to deal with later. As a result of this, they were set up into the ocean, and to add to their discomfort and displeasure, instead of docking, going to the closest dock or port and getting towed by the Coast Guard in Mexico, they had to get docked in Mobile, Alabama, which was significantly farther away. And the only reason for this we have is to weaken the financial burden on the Carnival Corporation. And as far as the Coast Guard is concerned, there's been, over the course of a decade, 90 incidents involving Coast Guard having to either tow boats to safety or take passengers to safety. And as a result of the Triumph specifically, there's been numerous lawsuits filed, plummeting stock values, and your company's ethics have been publicly called into question. Our consultants have formulated and analyzed some 3 basic problems that we're going to address in our presentation. The first is litigation and reputation exposure, which is currently at risk. Next, there's a stagnant financial performance that's affecting your company. And finally, we're going to address the ethical portion by integrating formalized ethics to your entire company, because it's not just the Triumph that was the main problem. There are many other factors, including public relations and other legal type scenarios and things of that nature, which are affecting your company's performance in all 3 sectors. As it happens, your mission statement actually says that you want to deliver exceptional experiences unrivaled at land or at sea. However, that's not currently happening. As you can see, your company is listed below a plethora of other cruise line companies, which is sort of embarrassing. The reason is, your company is the oldest and longest standing cruise line company in the entire industry. Why should your company be so far down when you have all these other sub-companies within your corporation that are actually performing to higher standards than you are? As you can see, 3 of them are listed right above. Other cruise incidents have contributed to the problem as well. We have the Carnival Splendor, which was another engine room fire which happened in November 2010. Unfortunately, there were 4,500 passengers which suffered 3 days off the coast of Mexico, drifting in the ocean. And of course, we had the Costa Concordia, which everybody has heard of. The ship hit a rock off the coast of Italy in 2012 in January. 32 passengers died out of the 3,230. And recently, these 3 cruise ships, over the course of a month, had technical sailing difficulties. One of them lost power and toilets stopped working. So that goes back to the situation where customers had to defecate into plastic bags and into buckets and hand them to employees to deal with. And then the Elation had steering malfunctions, which also sent them adrift in the ocean. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that are going on and a lot of reliance on the Coast Guard to help you out. We've devised two types of solutions to deal with this. We have a short-term and a long-term. Our short-term is devised for crisis management, so it's truly short-term. We want a quick settlement of those cases that we mentioned. We want a freeze on dividends, and a "we're sorry" public relations campaign. As far as our long-term, we want to focus on sustainability and mainly sustainable profits. We want to enact a customer bill of rights. We want to uphold the mission statement that you currently are unfortunately contradicting. And we want to meet the highest possible standards while enacting and exploring various green alternatives to powering your ship. Now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague Harleen, who will explain the legal side of this.
Our consulting team came up with a series of adjustments that Carnival should take to minimize their legal exposure. Starting with the Athens Convention, it was held in 1974, and there were two byproducts of the convention relating to passengers and luggage and health and safety standards. The health and safety standards include fire extinguishers, lifeboats, and alarms, all of which Carnival is complying to. However, these standards are not up to par with U.S. standards because Carnival is incorporated in Panama. Here are your company's health and safety standards, all of which are not being followed. Within their recent health inspection, Carnival failed the health inspection when they received a score of 84, and they needed an 86 to pass. There are several cases that have been filed against Carnival, two of which include Terry versus Carnival and Williams versus Carnival. Part of the claims are the plaintiff has been exposed to extremely toxic and delivery conditions resulting in severe and permanent injuries. Both these passengers were hospitalized when they went back to their hometown, and they suffered from dehydration and many injuries. However, Carnival claims that they're not responsible for any harm caused by emotional distress. The major class action lawsuit that has been filed against Carnival is the Cruisins versus Carnival Cruise Lines. It's made up of over 3,000 passengers who are on trial, and the claims are food shortages and their aggressive food lines, raw sewage in corridors, and tent cities for sleeping. Your company's current policy to pay out the minimum is currently working for you. However, it's not, as a company who owns over 50% of the industry, it's your responsibility to set high standards for others to follow. And by waiving liability whenever possible, Carnival is making passengers strip away their rights before they board the cruise, which doesn't hold them responsible if anything were to go wrong. And by incorporating their company in Panama, it takes away from the standards that they should be following. Starting with the ticket contract that Carnival allows their passengers to sign before they board, basically it strips away from all their rights. And this is actually stated by Jim Walker, who is a former defense attorney. And he also stated that even if passengers were to actually read these rights that they're signing before they board, they're still confusing. They have no idea what's going on and what Carnival would actually be responsible for if something were to go wrong. Insurance companies are favoring Carnival to fight these cases instead of simply settling, so they don't face the financial burden as well. And if insurance companies are helping Carnival fight these cases because they'll be able to avoid high insurance premiums. The ticket that includes including waiving liability for Carnival, it could easily be taken away because due to negligence from Carnival. The Cruisins lawsuit examined that the ship that was sent out to sea had failed many inspections and was not a seaworthy ship. However, Carnival knowingly sailed the ship anyways. The 2002 Carnival, the 2002 protocol and opt-out clause allows states to not honor the maximum payout if passengers sue in their own jurisdiction. This allows the risk of impose and also creates an issue with Sarbanes-Oxley in accounting. This, in turn, would decrease their direct costs because it would drop the number of cases. However, it would increase their indirect costs because it supports Carnival's increasing negative reputation. For our short-term solution, we urge a quick settlement of the cases because this would take away from the media storm that Carnival is currently facing, and they would allow, as a company who owns over 50% of the industry, they should be getting ahead of the regulatory curve. For a short-term solution, we propose that Carnival create a customer bill of rights, something that's similar to what passengers have on airlines, and this would allow them to actually know what they're doing and know what Carnival would be responsible for if something were to go wrong. And this would take away from the lack of transparency that Carnival is currently facing, and it would enable the trust and build the relationship that Carnival strives to provide and which your company is not providing at the time. Now I'll hand it over to Ibecc, who will go over the financial component.
One of the solutions, as stated earlier by Joey, was to enhance sustainable profitability. Now, right now, your company's stock price has been declining, and there are costly lawsuits pending against you, and these lawsuits and these incidents are causing bad publicity, which is negatively affecting your profitability. This graph shows some key metrics on your company, such as your return on investment, your return on assets, your profit margin, and your gross profit margin. All have been going down. This chart also shows some key metrics in the past couple of years, and all of them is going down. Your return on assets has been declining, your return on equity, and your return on investment. But your asset turnover has remained the same. What this means is that your costs have been going up, but your revenues have been declining. So the first solution that we told you about was the quick settlement of cases. Now, settling these cases quickly will help you financially because we believe that the potential lawsuits from these lawsuits outweigh just settling the cases confidentially outside of court. Regardless of you winning or losing these cases, the bad publicity that's being generated from the media the cost of that outweighs just settling the cases outside of court. The second solution that we wanted you guys to implement was the freeze on dividends. Recently, your company has declared dividends at 25 cents a share with 592 million shares. That's a quarterly dividend. However, annually, that's $1 a share for 592 million shares. So that's $592 million that you could be using on a PR campaign to increase your reputation or to increase enhance the safety of your ships. Recently, after the Gulf oil spill, BP spent $100 million on a PR campaign, and they most recently had the most profitable quarter they've ever had. So they bounced back from that using PR, and we believe that if you use the money that you declared on dividends on your PR campaign, you can do that too. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Joey, and he'll talk about the long-term solutions and how they'll impact your finances.
Now that we've established some of the short-term or crisis management-oriented solutions for financial aspect, we're going to establish some of the long-term or more sustainable solutions, which is starting off with the customer bill of rights. We believe that the customer bill of rights is important because it illustrates a clearer picture to the customers, but not only to them, to the workers and employees, to everybody in the corporation, what they can expect. It also guarantees adequate customer reimbursement in times of crisis and emergency, such as the Carnival Triumph. This gives them more peace of mind and gives them the opportunity to actually know what's going on versus having the opportunity to look at what's going on. Will ensure their peace of mind this way. Our next solution is to uphold the mission statement, which is currently not being upheld. As we've stated, you want to deliver exceptional experiences unrivaled at land or at sea. We believe that upholding this mission statement, as you state, is important for Carnival. It is important for you to establish goal congruency corporation-wide. We think that this solid belief system is crucial for your financial success, not only in the long term, but also in the short term, as we've established with dividends. We believe that a structured mission statement, in turn, helps a structured work environment, a structured cruise experience, and a structured environment for everybody in the entire organization. As the leading cruise company in the industry, we believe it is not only your responsibility, but is your duty to uphold these kind of things and to enact them immediately, because you set the example for other cruise lines in the entire industry. Next, we're going to illustrate some of the ethical problems and solutions with Shannon.
Due to the recent events of the Triumph incident, there's been a tremendous amount of attention on your company and your company's morale. The current ethical problems that your company is facing is lack of transparency for customer rights, failure to provide seaworthy ships, and failure to protect company's financial health. If we take a look at your ethical code of conduct, your company states you want to build and maintain trust in your business relationships and pursue the highest standards of ethical behavior remain a fundamental aspect of our company's core values. Have you been maintaining trust with your customers? There's been an all-time low of customer satisfaction. If you look on your company's forum, there is many comments from customers that have suffered the events from the Triumph, stating that they felt like they were treated like cattle. They had to wait in line for over 3 hours to just get a little amount of food, that they had to defecate in plastic bags. This is not a type of vacation anyone wants to sign up for. There's a large number of lawsuits pending. And your investor sentiment. Investors are very unconfident in investing with your company because of declining stock prices. High standard of ethical behavior. It's been reported that the company has been putting profit over customer experience. It was decided to tug the boat towards the Alabama port instead of Mexico. Although the company might felt like that was the best decision, many people believe that the company chose to do that for financial reasons. Again, lack of transparency. Many customers are angry about how they were compensated because of the recent events of the Triumph incident. They felt like that was not enough. But again, they're still unclear about what they can expect from Carnival. Fulfilling the bare minimum standards. Although you are not doing anything illegally and you're meeting all your legal obligations, this is very offensive to your customers. Your stakeholders. There has been over 4,000 stakeholders that were directly affected by this incident. There is a harmful experience to over 3,000 of your customers. There is inadequate reimbursement. Let's keep in mind, they took a week off vacation. Many people don't get more than a week off vacation for the entire year. And then to put in perspective, they had to take another 5 days off unwillingly because the boat had to be drafted back to the U.S. That's an extra 5 days of work that their boss is not going to compensate them for. And additional charges go towards babysitting. Some customers have reported they had to pay their babysitters extra for their children and their pets, and lack of transparency. Carnival state on the back of their ticket, it says that they have no legal obligation if there's no physical damage to them. There's unnecessary financial risk. Again, the stock prices are declining 8% while your competitors are currently increasing. Carnival currently holds 52% of the market share. Why is this happening? Because there's negative PR hurting the company image. Because of this Triumph event, and let's keep in mind that this isn't the only event that's happened. After the Triumph event, there's been 3 other ships that were affected that had technical difficulties within the span of a month. How about your employees? They had to endure the same experience during the Triumph. They were the front line of your company. They had to put in extra customer service, and they had to deal with all that stress as well as your customers. But all your customers were taken out on them. Who was the one to pick up the plastic bags full of feces, they had to do it. But unfortunately, they weren't compensated in any way. They didn't get paid extra. They didn't get any bonuses. And their employment is potentially jeopardized because the reduced amount of cruise lines customers and future customers are going to be hesitant to go on a cruise with Carnival Cruise Lines. This is an ethical issue because you guys are compromising your integrity and in violating your mission statement and code of conduct, code of ethics, and putting stakeholders in jeopardy. We've decided to measure how unethical your company has been operating by using the GBX Codex, which is a widely endorsed conduct that has 8 principal guidelines. We've evaluated and seen that Carnival has been in clear violation of at least 4 principles. Our goal is to make sure that Carnival is violating 0 of these principles. Carnival has a fiduciary responsibility to maintain the economic health of the company. The problem right now is your stocks are decreasing, and this negative PR image is deeply hurting your company's economic health. MBI Consulting has come up with a solution to issue a public apology and use that freeze on dividends and put that money towards a PR campaign. As you can see in recent events, JCPenney is currently using a PR campaign to apologize to their existing customer base felt offended about their new rebranding image. And also BP has record-breaking profits because of all the PR campaign they have done to rebuild their reputation. Carnival has a property responsibility to protect the company's assets and the equipment. There's been various problems reported with damaged equipment, not just for Triumph, but also many other of your cruise lines within the past year. And one of your mission statements is to provide seaworthy ships. The reason why the Triumph incident happened was because of an engine fire room. 2 weeks prior to that engine fire room, there was reports of damaged equipment and technical difficulties on that ship. It is your ethical responsibility. If you know that equipment is damaged on your ship, do not let that ship go out and on a cruise if it's not capable. The solution is to inspect equipment and fix it and operate at the highest standards. If there's a problem, fix it right away. And this is also an internal effect. If you want to avoid spending money towards PR campaigns, settling lawsuits, all this could be avoided if you take care of your ships properly and make sure they're operating adequately. Reliability. Your company has a responsibility to be reliable to your customers. One of your main statements in your ethic code of conduct is building trust and maintaining relationships with your customers. How many I'm positive that none of the customers that experienced that trip on the Triumph will want to come back. Yes, you offered them, part of the compensation package was to offer them a voucher towards a free cruise towards the next one. After enduring those 5 days of so-called hell, no one's going to want to come back. So we want to make sure that Carnival is going to be reliable and try and maintain their customers' trust. So Carnival needs to make customer service a priority and offer adequate compensation package. And you guys can do that by reevaluating your liability to your customers and establishing a customer bill of rights so they know what they could expect. And that goes towards our last principle, transparency. Jim Walker, a former defense attorney for the cruise industry, stated that the back of the ticket where you provide the fine print of your company says that you guys are not legally obligated to compensate any of your customers if there's psychological harm, mental harm, or emotional harm. And that strips all the rights from the customers, and it's also written in a very confusing way. Customers don't know what to expect if they have to endure something like this, and they also feel disrespected. Again, this goes back to the Customer Bill of Rights. As you can see, the airline industry has fly rights that if your flight is delayed for a day, then you'll get reimbursed a certain amount of percent, and that reimbursement goes up to 400%. We believe that if Carnival establishes a customer bill of rights, then you will be doing more than the bare legal minimum, but also prevent you from doing the legal maximum. And that way customers will feel confident that you are trying to respect them and honor their dignity and provide the best customer service that you can.
So throughout the presentation, we talked about two different types of solutions, short-term and long-term. The short-term solutions were all about crisis management, ending this bad media storm and getting some money together to focus on a PR campaign. These include a quick settlement of cases, a freeze on dividends, which would allow you to have the money to fund a PR campaign to say that we're sorry to your customers. And then the long-term solutions were all about sustainability. We want to have a customer bill of rights so that there isn't any gray areas on what your company is responsible for to the customers in case of a crisis. And also to uphold your mission statement so your reputation is again enhanced and your customers can trust you again, as stated in your mission statement. That's what you wanted. And to meet the highest possible standards, not just to do the minimum, to meet U.S. standards, not just international standards, and to explore green alternatives. The Triumph had lost its power, and some cruise companies are putting solar panels on their cruises so that if they lose power, they can use the solar panels to power the basic necessities, such as air conditioning, and that would have been a big help on the Triumph. Thank you for listening to us, and if you have any questions, please address them.
Thank you, team. Who'd like to read out the questions?
I've got a ton of questions for you. Okay, so 3,000 people have hired a lawyer or a law firm for a class action, correct? Now, one of your three short-term solutions was, let's make this all go away quickly by settling cases. I should tell you I'm a lawyer. Why plaintiffs' counsel are the ones who make out like bandits in class actions, because they get a piece of every part of the action. And they also, when they sue like this, they bill by the hour. So the more they bill, the longer it takes for these individuals to get paid or to come to a settlement, the more the law firm goes ka-ching, ka-ching. So now that you're already in a class action, how viable is this strategy of saying, let's get this settled fast? The lawyers are not going to want to settle it fast just for their own pocketbooks. So have you thought about that? How are you going to deal with that?
Well, if Carnival is offering like some sort of compensation that the customers would be happy with, I think that it would help the lawyers work through it.
But do you understand that once it's in a class action status, that the class then votes as a class? I can't say, having not opted out of the class at the beginning, they can say, here's a class if you want to opt out. Once you opt in, you don't get to say, you know what? I really like my money now, thank you very much, I'll take it. You're already in the class, you can't get out of it.
But the class votes if they want to settle the case, correct? Is it a majority vote, or is it if it's like everyone has to say that we want to settle?
Well, I'm asking you.
Well, I would say it would be a majority vote. I mean, I think that if Carnival wanted to settle the case, they could offer a...
And what do you think the lawyers for these people are going to say at that point? Why would they want a fast settlement as opposed to saying, let this drag on? The longer it drags on, the worse the publicity, the lower the stock price goes, the more we're going to bleed out of this company at the end of the day.
Well, the main goal at the end of this is to avoid longer PR, and we understand that many of these solutions will cost more money for the company and a great sum of money for the company in the short run. So we believe
But how much more are you prepared to pay than what you believe these claims would otherwise be worth then?
Well, that would be something we would have to negotiate with the lawyers. But we
$100,000 a person. I mean, this is what lawyers do. They throw invisible numbers at it. What do you have what's your break point?
Well, I mean, with the freeze on dividends, your company should be getting $592 million annually. And we could use that money to settle these cases.
So let me ask you something really stupid, because I'm not a finance person, I'm just a lawyer. If you freeze dividends, why would I, as an investor, we're all board members, that means we all have a lot of stock options in Carnival. If you freeze the dividends, why will investors invest in Carnival? Won't that depress the price of the stock further?
The stock price will decline in the short run, but settling these cases and ending this media storm, and then using the rest of the money from freezing the dividends to enhance our ship so that we can lower the prevent future incidents. In the long run, there will be long-term profitability.
Okay, let me ask you another ethical question, because I cruise all the time, and I'm embarrassed to say on Celebrity, which is owned by Carnival, but not Carnival. Carnival has had the reputation for years of being the dog of the industry, of being the cheapest of the cruise lines, with the worst of the food, the oldest of the ships, place for party animals and frat boys to go in spring break, not for, for people who are a little bit more aspirational in terms of their vacations. So doesn't everybody who goes on a Carnival cruise sort of assume a certain degree of risk, if you will, that the food isn't going to be great, that the service isn't going to be so great, that the ships are older and more prone to something not as catastrophic as this, of course, than if you go on an Oceania cruise and you spend $10,000 a person as opposed to $400 a person for 5 days.
Well, of course, you always get what you pay for, but the company's ethics states that they want to build and maintain trust and operate at the highest standards. Are you really okay with operating at the lowest minimum as a company that has 52% market share? Do you really just want to operate and say, oh, we are the cheapest one, so let's give them the cheapest customer service?
So does that mean a Porsche gives the same, a bicycle gives the same customer service as a Porsche? I mean, isn't that per se going to be different?
No, it doesn't, but because of your ethical code of conduct, I believe you should try and treat your customers with the utmost dignity.
I think it all goes back to what kind of company are you and what kind of standards do you hold yourself to. And especially, it goes on any board. You could sell Porsches, you could sell bicycles, you could sell mountain bikes, whatever. Okay. But it's all the customer. It's the same customer. No matter who it is, there shouldn't be any judgments on whether this customer should expect this customer should expect to pay for this kind of experience. It's still an experience regardless. It's a vacation. Just because their time might be not as valuable as somebody higher up or going on a better cruise line doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a better person.
Do any of these cruise lines, are they any of them incorporated in the United States, or aren't most of them incorporated in Panama or Liberia?
Yes.
So is anybody incorporated in the U.S.?
Not any of Carnival's sub-brands.
Right.
But
or other companies.
Yeah, they don't meet the requirements of the U.S. safety and requirements. And in the past several years, there's been over 9 incidents in which the U.S. Coast Guard has had to tow these ships, and the West Virginia senator actually sent a letter to your company saying that, we want compensation for the U.S. Coast, the taxpayers' money for the U.S. Coast Guard. And at first you declined, but the bad publicity from that whole situation, you later decided to pay the U.S. Coast Guard. And the West Virginia State Senator is still upset about this and is actually trying to fight for to close some loopholes that you have on taxes. You currently pay 0.6% on taxes for the U.S., but he wants it to increase it, obviously, because of all the hardship you've caused the U.S. Coast Guard.
So why, in your whole code of recommendations, didn't you recommend making voluntary tax payments or voluntary donations to the Coast Guard Academy or something like that as a means of public relations?
Well, I think it goes back to how many other incidents in international waters have happened. Maybe it was 90 for the U.S. Coast Guard, and that's what we're hearing. But how many? It could have been hundreds for other international Coast Guard services had to come and pay out. So.
Okay, Greg, in interest of time.
Yeah. So I have a question here. I thought I heard you guys say, and I like this, that legal obligation is not the same as ethical obligation, right? back of the tickets, they're not breaking any laws. So I guess my question is the reason for the imperative, the should, and the ought in this situation, is it for us, the board, or is it for our customers, or is it for both? And how, if it's for both, how does that work?
Well, it's for both, really, because you should want to do the maximum because, or not the maximum, but more than the minimum. And the back of the ticket, it's very like complicated for the average person to just read, to understand. That's why we wanted to put the customer bill of rights on the back. And like the fly rights that are currently implemented, on the fly rights it says if you miss, you know, if we take you off your flight and your destination is delayed by a certain amount of time, we'll pay you more and more. And we believe that it should be clearly stated, like if there's a crisis and you were supposed to arrive home this day and you're a day delayed or 2 days delayed, then you should be paid more and more, so that it'll prevent future lawsuits based on misunderstanding, and the customer will know what he or she is obligated to, how much money they should get, not just go straight to a lawyer and ask them how much money should I get, and the lawyer's going to say, well, as much as possible.
So you're saying it's then ethically beneficial for the company to create some more standards because it can save us from future class actions.
Yes.
So we have customers as stakeholders, employees, investors. Are there any others? So those are the main three you listed, okay. So it seems like your approach is maybe, let's argue or assume it's a good idea for the customers and the employees, but what are we going to tell our investors when they paid a certain price for the stock's dropped a lot, now we're taking away the dividend, temporarily presumably, but we're taking it away. What are we going to say to our investors, and what do you recommend we do to appease them?
Well, we would remind them that, one, we're the largest cruise company in the industry, and that even though we're taking a dip now, we're doing it for long-term profitability. And in past incidents in the 90s and the early 2000s, after some certain cruise accidents, our stock did dip, but it did come back to where it was before, and sometimes exceeded to where it was before these incidents.
And to add to that, part of that money that we're using to freeze on dividends is to also not just handle this crisis management right now, but to also put that towards building better equipment for our ships. So you can tell your investors that we're investing in our company for longer solutions, so we can avoid frequent breakdowns. You're investing in better equipment. And you can also compare it to BP. BP had many more lawsuits against them. They had to clean up the Gulf. They had to spend a large amount of money, and now they currently experience their all-time high in profits.
Sylvia?
Yes, okay. Two things. You talk about the employees being upset. Okay. Have you figured out how much it costs to train an employee, and then how much it costs when you lose one regarding any benefits that they get, or them coming back and suing? Have you figured out that to tell the company as to what those are things? Because employee, I mean, think about this, how much it costs to train an employee, and put that, you know, what's that going to cost the company? And also, you keep saying it's the largest in the industry. Well, how much does this hurt the credibility of the industry? Not just the credibility of Carnival, but the entire credibility of the industry. What has this done has it lowered people wanting to go? Or, I mean, personally, I wouldn't go. So I'm just asking, how's it affecting the credibility of the industry, that you may tell your stockholders, that your investors, well, when we do this, it'll help the credibility of everyone. So in your PR, have you thought about that?
As far as the credibility of everything and the whole nature of the entire industry, I think it tremendously affects people's desires to go on cruises. I mean, if we had a show of hands in this room, I'm sure there wouldn't be over 25% of the people after this presentation wanting to go on a cruise.
And also after the initial Triumph incident and the string of incidents that happened after that, the stock prices of your company, as well as your chief competitors, Norwegian and Royal Caribbean, all went down. But as of from the period between February 12th and May 8th, your stock has gone down 8%, but Royal Caribbean has gone up 3% and Norwegian has gone up 8%. So you're really losing out on this. You guys definitely need to get your reputation back up so that you were once had the highest value, but now you're lower than 2 of your chief competitors. So
you're telling me it hasn't hurt the credibility of the industry?
Well, initially it hurt all these 3. These are the 3 major players in the cruise industry. It hurt those 3 initially, but then separation started to happen. Norwegian and Royal Caribbean started to come back, but Carnival stayed at its all-time low and has only recently gone up, I think, at like $2 in its share price, but it's still 8% below it was before these string of incidents occurred.
What about the employees? When you're talking to investors, what are you going to say if you lose so many employees and then you have to retrain? It costs. So have you figured that out? Because investors are going to want to know what's happening, and then the lawyers for the employees. But as an investor, I would want to know how many employees and what's it going to cost. So why am I having to pay for something you screwed up on with employees? Why am I, like you said, why am I being held back?
Well, I would say that because of past incidents, we've definitely lost employees in incidents in the 90s, but our stock price has always bounced back from the dip that we do take. So I would say that just, history repeats itself. We will bounce back, and these loss of employees, we're going to use these freeze on dividends to pay for that as well, and we will definitely.
Okay, you're not answering my question. You have to retrain employees, and the reputation. You're having to spend money to retrain employees when you lose them, plus them suing you, plus the unemployment. Have you thought about that?
Well, we have
your discussion to what it's costing the company, and who wants to go to work for them? I just added that. Who wants to go to work for them?
Unfortunately, we don't know a specific number on how much it costs to train an employee, but employees are one of the highest assets of a company, your human resources. So we do want to value them and we do want to respect them. So that's why we said that Carnival has not decided to compensate any of the employees that on the recent disasters, but we want to fix that. We want to offer them a bonus or something. I don't know the amount of money right now, but we want to do something to say, we appreciate you. They were the ones that had to provide that incredible amount of customer service. They had to take that stress and they had to operate at higher standards than expected when the Triumph incident happened. So we acknowledge that, and we realize that employees are stakeholders and they are very valuable to the company and the company's reliability and reputation. So we do not know how much it costs to train one, but we also don't want to just be expendable with the employees, and we also want to thank them. We believe your company should offer them some type of bonus or compensation package for the amount of stress they had to go through and meeting that over expectation for trying to deal with this recent incident.
Carl? Speaking as a board member of Carnival Cruise Lines, I'm wondering if our company is really seriously at fault here, because we spent a lot of money for these ships. Marine architects apparently designed the ships in an inadequate way, not up to standards. I'm told recently that there are about 10 ships in the cruise business that have redundant systems, so that if something breaks down, they have a backup system to keep the ship going. Electricity going, or the engines going, or something of that sort. And the marine architects that designed the ships for us I think were negligent because they put cabins in place on the ship. They used the space for cabins to sell to passengers instead of putting in these redundant systems. Do you think that we can transfer the majority of the blame to the, don't the marine architects deserve that?
Yeah, they do definitely deserve that, but we can't just put all of the blame on them. We have to take some of the blame for accepting these ships, for allowing the marine architects to do this to our ships, to know that our competitors have these redundant systems that we do not have. So that's why one of our solutions was to have these, to go green essentially, and have these solar panels on top of our ship, on top of your ships, so that in case of a crisis, the necessities would be powered, such as sewage and air conditioning, so people can still be comfortable while you guys try to assess the situation and solve the problem. But I don't think all of the blame, I mean, they should be blamed, but not all of the blame should be. Your company still has some, they still have to answer for certain actions.
But we went to the experts. We bought their expertise. How are we supposed to know about the redundancy requirements? That's why we went to the marine architects. They're specialists, they're professionals, they're licensed. They should do it right the first time, shouldn't they?
They should, but some of the blame still comes back to your company because they failed numerous health inspections, and they knew before sailing some of these ships that they were subpar ships, but they knowingly sailed these ships regardless.
We do have time for one last question. Would you like to have? Sure. Please.
Well, if the main, sounds like you're saying the main ethical issue is that some of the things that we've done go against our code of ethics, would you recommend just changing our code of ethics so that we're not breaching it?
Well, I mean, you would change it to, our mission is to do the bare minimum to to be responsible for at least amount as possible to our customers. I mean, that won't look good on your part. That would be honestly a terrible code of ethics. But there's nothing wrong with your code of ethics. What's wrong is you're not upholding it. You're not adhering by it and following it. You're not going by you're not following your code of ethics, in that you haven't maintained the trust in your customers. Your customers have lost this trust in you because of these string of incidents and your lack of care for the compensation, because you're giving them vouchers for another cruise vacation where I'm sure they don't want that. So and your ticket, what you're liable for on the back of your ticket says, well, you're not liable for anything. You sign this, and your customers are stripped of all their rights. They don't know what they're supposed to expect from a crisis. So that's why they head straight to a lawyer and ask them, what can we do to get what we think we deserve from Carnival, your company.
Okay, we've reached the end of Q&A. In a heated environment. Thank you very much. And now it's time for the judges to give you some constructive feedback on your project. Start down here.
Okay. Overall, I thought you guys did well. I appreciated the presentation. I fully believed you that Carnival, based on their own standards, had done something unethical. I guess I saw that as like the root of the moral dilemma, that Carnival, there was somewhere falling out between what we say and what we actually do. And I kept trying to work up kind of a workaround, like, well, there's always going to be anomalies, but then after the thing about the plastic bags, bro, probably get past that one. So, yeah, in a crisis situation, I think there's going to be a lot of good counter arguments about, well, what about the class action stuff? And I mean, what else can you say except for in the short term we've got to make very costly quick fixes so that we can then get on a path to long-term solution sustainability. I like the point that you made. I brought up the question about legal obligations, not ethical obligation. And to some extent, the heart of the service industry is, like, built into the service industry is part of this, love your neighbor principle. This understanding that you are going to go above and beyond. So even if Carnival, as an entertainment service provider, can be justified legally, like justified according to the law, that's not the same in people's minds and perceptions as, you're someone we actually want to trust. And so I liked how morally you guys kind of pulled that out, because our tendency is to, well, I was doing this as you were talking, it's to either pass the blame to the ship makers or whoever, or it's to justify why we've done what we've done. Well, we just got a bunch of frat boys who showed up at this thing anyway. 5 days floating around sea, that's like party boat for those guys. Drinking salt water, tequila or whatever. So rather than pass blame or justify, I like that you kind of pulled out this dimension of, no, we can't try to work around the nature of the law here, because there's something that goes deeper, which is how people perceive whether or not they're being really served and loved and cared for in an environment that promotes trust. So I thought you did a good job with that. I can't really argue with an ethical problem. I thought it was kind of, not obvious in a bad sense, but it wasn't like an ethical conundrum that I had to try to understand, and I did appreciate that you gave both short and long-term solutions. So overall, good job, good use of visuals. I appreciated the outline at the top of the screen. One thing I want to say, is that there was a few slides, I don't remember who it was, but there was a few times when there was way more stuff on the slide than I had time to actually think about. And I just wrote down, I'm not impressed by what I can't process. Meaning, just because there's this deluge of information, I can't, if I don't have time to actually think through it or see it or hear what it says, then it's just kind of background noise. But otherwise, I thought you guys did a fine job.
Good. Ruth, how about you?
Well, the difficulty about being a lawyer here is that I know a lot about the law of negligence and what that agreement means and common carrier agreements. And, so there, in the Costa Concordia, there was an issue about what the captain, et cetera, were doing, whether they would play with frat boys and let the, ship go aground. But if you have an act of God, like a storm or terrible turbulence and something occurs, that's what that thing saying we're limited to negligence deals with. And in terms of psychological disability, anybody can go to a psychologist and say, I've been morally harmed, emotionally distressed for the rest of my life, and how do you quantify that in the absence of physical injury that goes along with it? So those are the legal basis for these two things. My first comment, seriously, is that we're the board, and the use of the words excrement and feces happened a heck of a lot. And you're not pitching to the public about what's going on. We know it's our company. Anybody who has any shred of decency, whether you're trying to evade liability for this or cut your losses financially, gets that these conditions were outrageous. But I think that it turned me off a lot to the point where I was like, okay, so I've hired consultants to talk to me about feces. We know that's why you're here, because we've got a problem. Let's get to the solution, rather than harping on it over and over. I just want to say also you need to proofread your slides, because I found at least 3 typos, Athens apostrophe S as opposed to the spelling of the city. There were like 3 or 4 places where there were typos. So you always need to check that, because as Sylvia said to the team earlier, it makes a very, very important impression. I thought you had a couple of really tremendous missed opportunities. It's funny because the word exceptional experience, this was an exceptional experience. It was an exceptional experience for the worse. It was terrible. But a company could argue, and they probably will argue in a court of law, that this was just an extraordinary, unforeseeable, like a domino theory situation, that they could not have anticipated the degree of what had happened. And that might have been a very relevant part of an apology, not just to say, oh, we're going to apologize, but how are we going to apologize? how, specifically, are we going to apologize to individuals? Are we going to have a public relations campaign? What would that campaign consist of? So I thought that was important. Interestingly enough, you put up this codex, and when you talked about the thing going, too much information going too fast, 4 things at the top were highlighted. I couldn't even write it down fast enough because then you changed slides. But the 5th one that you didn't highlight was dignity. And I thought you could have run this entire presentation to us in terms of an ethical dynamic about the dignity of the people involved, the dignity of us as a company, as a board. Look how mortified we should be about this. The dignity of the passengers, the dignity of the crew, and that would each lead to your Venn diagrams of how you're going to. You could have made that the capstone of the entire thing. And that dignity and a Bill of Rights very much go together. So instead of just saying we're going to have a Bill of Rights, I thought that if you had gone straight to the Codex and then said, what will our Bill of Rights say? You could have been very explicit as opposed to talking generally. And similarly, the airline industry, and I was a JetBlue victim, so on the tarmac for hours, a lot of people will tell you, you know what, it's something, it was required by federal law, but it's lousy, it's not good enough. So you could have pitched this to us as here you have a great opportunity to be the industry leader and create a standard that will provide for X. You know, would it stop a class action? The answer is it probably wouldn't unless initiated under federal law, which doesn't apply because it's a foreign corporation. And the reason is because this was such an extraordinary event, as opposed to one day without water, or, you know, one day of spoiled food or something, or norovirus, or all the other things that can happen. This was just a totally extraordinary thing. And then I want to address something that Sylvia mentioned, the employees as stakeholders. I've been on cruises. We cruise all the time. We love to cruise. And the one notable thing is the number of U.S. nationals who work on cruise lines is almost negligible. Basically, if you're maybe the social director, and they're typically British. There's a reason for that. Most of these employees come from the third world. They come from Eastern Europe or from Indonesia, Malaysia, places where there are not good economic opportunities or resources. And the truth is that they are in contracts of adhesion with the cruise lines, from the fanciest ones to the dogs of the industry, and they do not have bargaining power. They don't have jobs at home. Our assistant waitress 2 weeks ago in China was a lawyer from Sofia, Bulgaria. Okay? Graduated high in her class and was saving money to get a master's degree in law. And so I was spending dinner recommending law school programs for her in the United States. So I thought that the employees' rights, to the extent that they don't have very many, should have been addressed. Not just that they're a stakeholder in terms of how you train them, but what message are you giving, or what message are we giving as an employer when we're taking advantage of these people and they were living in the same conditions with lack of dignity as the people who signed up for the cruise. That said, I always look at the year, and 3 of you are, from what I can figure out, sophomores in college, and I think you held your own pretty well under a lot of pressure.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
I particularly want to praise the ethical argument here, because you're the first group today that I've seen that has touched all 3 elements of the ethics dynamic model: compliance, values, and trust. I think you can strengthen that a bit. The compliance, I heard some uncertainty about whether Carnival was operating in compliance with the laws. Compliance with U.S. laws, no. Compliance with foreign laws, yes. There was some uncertainty about compliance, whether we were sending ships out of compliance with the law or not. So that could be clarified. Values, I think the dignity argument is spot on. That's a terrific values piece. And trust, which is the all-encompassing thing, the Bill of Rights addresses trust very well. So I think you were very strong, but you can be even stronger in the ethical argument.
Great, thanks, Alan. Let's just keep going down the line.
So, let me give you my feedback. I'll give you both. Way to go. and developmental help. So I like the good job reminding us who we were at the beginning. I think you did that, right? And it was, hey, you're the board. So it put us in the right frame of mind. So that was a really good idea to do that. And laying out the facts and sort of the issues, and that was a good thing, good introduction. I really liked the good job defending, especially when you were defending the dividend and how that would, in the long run, benefit the company and its stakeholders. So that was really good. Impressive how you did this about notes or index cards. That was very awesome. It's not everybody's able to do that, so good job on that. I didn't get the opt-out clause thing at all. I think it was just one of the same comments. Some things kind of got going quickly and wasn't able to process or keep up, so watch out for that. I liked how you laid out the solutions and came back and tried to support them and build on the case, because I wasn't sure if you were that was it, or it might have been better just to set time, okay, here's the solutions, and we're going to let you know why and how, and the benefits, the detriments, the consequences, the risks, and the reasons to do these. I felt like a little bit on some of the things it might have been helpful to show a financial, you just make a bunch of assumptions, right? It's just it's a projection, it's a pro forma something. Here's what we project's going to happen. I think that's compelling to a board, right? To support your recommendation, that would have been a good idea. On the ethics, I agree with Carl. I mean, I think you did a good job covering it all. I felt in a few cases you could have elaborated more and strengthened your arguments. Some of them felt just kind of conclusive statements to me without backup for your position, and I thought there were some arguments you could have made too, which, you got to do what you say here. You've been saying all these things to people, you got to do what you say. Also just felt like unethical marketing. Lay out all these promises and this, here's what we are, here's our mission statement, and then you're not doing what you tell everybody you're going to do. That's highly unethical to me. So it would have been a little stronger if you could have done that. I think the transparency argument and the kind of exclusionary language just wasn't clear to me if what they were really going to be covered for or not. I mean, I understand the psychological, emotional harm, but aren't they still covered for physical and property loss? It really wasn't clear to me what you were saying they were going to get or not get. It felt like you were emphasizing what they weren't going to get without admitting that a customer might get something. Right? But overall, very good. It was a challenging one, and certainly we're speaking to a challenging group, right? Board of directors, so.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Ron.
Thanks. Also, with the presentation, I like the map at the top of it. It shows like where you're at. I really like that. Again, there were some grammatical opportunities. Just remember, be consistent and maybe less slides, because there was a lot of flipping back and forth. I think it did all make sense in the end, but I didn't realize till later that, okay, now they're going back to this to cover it. So I thought I was missing something, but then it did go back, and that worked. I wasn't sure how I felt about the shock value of, I felt like it was kind of trying to use shock value with the, talking about the defecating and maybe the caveat that, hey, let's be brutally honest here. This is what happened. I think I might have taken it a little bit better with the caveat. Like, let's be honest. This is what happened. This is why we're all here. We're going to just lay it out on the table, what these people went through. But good job with that. I really like the ethics part in referring to our own code of conduct, because what else can we do than what we say we're going to do, and hold ourselves to our own standards that we're putting out there. The specific solutions and justifications for those, I thought those were strong, and the conclusion of wrapping it all up. I thought the example of BP was good, because it's like, hey, they were in a really, really bad place too. Look what they're doing now. That could be us. So I thought that was good. I thought that there could have been better use of either pictures or something with the slides to make them more engaging, to give me a little bit more interest up there. But overall, good job.
Thank you.
I didn't know the situation on the employees that they had, that you brought up. You know, I was thinking about American employees, as we have on.
But it does raise an ethical issue that when they're not American, they're not the only one. The captain's eligible for unemployment, by the way, because if he's American. Nobody else is eligible.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Law, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, okay. And I thought it was great, your presentation. Someone did use, when you're talking to the board, it's best not to use the phrases, you guys. You know, you guys. Now, that's how people talk in school, or even in work, to each other. But if you're talking to the board of directors, it's not you guys. Think that this was being filmed, too. You guys. So if you were talking to the press about it. So you need to be careful about that. And I did think, I thought the slides were great. There were some slides, like they said, there were some things that were not said. The slide was there. I mean, the points were there, but nothing, it wasn't covered until later. And I kind of missed out on writing it down, thinking, well, what about this? You missed what that point was. And I guess you did come back. I agree with her about the list, because I thought, oh, there's other things on that list that could be clearer. And there is something, because I have a PR background, is I would have liked to have seen more specific solutions on what you're going to do publicly. How you're going to market yourselves now, how you would tell us to be PR-wise. You could say, we think PR, you know, to make good PR is that the president or the CEO should get on television and make a public statement. Not just a letter, but get out there and even make a public statement in a large, pay the New York Times.
Oh, that's right.
You know, make a full page. Be a little more specific and creative with that, because you're talking to the board of directors who may be sitting there going, oh my God, you know, and you have to take that over and let them think, oh yeah, we can do that, and maybe they'll, you know. So that was something I would have liked to have seen. Just a little bit more of the solution side when you're talking about you've got to do something publicly, is to give some suggestions on it and get your thinking caps going. What would you like to see that would make a difference?
Apropos PR, I think somewhere in your summary, it talked about rebranding the ship.
Yeah.
Renaming. And it didn't come out at all in the presentation, but it was in the, I think it was in the summary. And that might have been very interesting to hear some thoughts that we're going to change all the names of the ships. We're going to get rid of the Carnival name completely, because people have short memories, and if we call it something else.
It says to rebrand, right.
To rebrand.
The
The
value
triumph.
generator.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Work with you. Thank you to our judges. Thank you to our attendees.